This is the response, the official ACT position on Tusiata Avea's poem and what should happen with it.
Speaking of co-governance, ACT has just released a press statement this morning, which you've had a brief chance to go over. Basically, funding, taxpayer funding for a stage show, the Savage Colonizer. Yes, so what's ACT's stance on this? You obviously believe that it shouldn't be?
Yeah, look, I think the government should withdraw its funding of this particular project. Look, we have a lot of money going into creative arts. What we don't want to see is hate-fueled art being funded by the government. You know, what is the difference here between a piece of art that says that it wants to get rid of James Cook and all of its descendants and is making hate-filled racist statements? What difference is that to anything else that's come out of the Christchurch attack?
Yeah. No.
Okay. Sorry, I missed the last part from the host. So the ACT Party deputy leader has made that statement, and the host says,
"Yeah, no, I agree." All right.
Yeah,
well, let's move on.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. So the deputy leader of ACT has said an imaginary poem talking about colonization and how Pacific people feel about perhaps losing their autonomy, losing their culture, is the same. How is it any different than what a mass murderer did with a gun in mosques in Christchurch, Aaron? That's the official position from ACT. What are your thoughts, sir?
That's extraordinary, eh? The answer to your first question is it was a masterclass of not answering the question and just barreling on with your talking points. It was a hell of a segue talking about co-governance, just to then go to talking about co-governance.
Speaking of co-governance, here's another question about a brown person. That's basically the segue.
Yeah, that we're all rightly aggrieved by, yeah, it's a pretty dangerous thing, I think, for the state to get involved in what shouldn't, or for politicians in particular to get involved in what should and shouldn't be funded. You know, leaving aside the fact that the show is about to open, I don't know how you can withdraw funding for a show that is.
Well, let me ask you this as well. What they want Chippy to overstep a mark, go above the head of Creative New Zealand, an independent body, and say no, like. These people who want smaller government, who want less interference, who want less bureaucracy, they want the government to now put their foot on the neck of Creative New Zealand, an independent body, to withdraw funding that's already been spent. What are you fucking talking about?
It's weird, eh, how the loudest voices in support of free speech are often the most fragile and litigious.
Yeah.
When it comes to things that they don't like, or people talking about them almost as if it isn't really about free speech at all, but just being able to fortify the status quo. I saw a great tweet today. This reminds us of all of the moral panic around hip hop and a lot of middle class white people who insisted on taking hip hop lyrics literally. And whipping up a frenzy about that. This is an artistic expression of, a build-up around the impacts of colonization, which is, the very nature of this country. And if that isn't something that our state creative agencies should be funding, then I don't know what is. And yes, that is going to be uncomfortable for people. And we should be proud of having artists of this caliber who are working in this realm and creating work of this nature. And politicians should be ashamed of themselves for creating an environment where people are uncomfortable or unprepared to be able to say that publicly for fear of what is going to rain down on them from people who have chosen to take this up as the cause of the day. It is surely we're mature enough and grown up enough and big enough and ugly enough to be able to have these debates. But there's a long running, and they will say that it's not about censorship, it's that state funding shouldn't be applied, but they're not arguing that the state shouldn't fund art, are they? They're just arguing that it shouldn't be used in this case, so they should be able to
but that was one of the comments was they say pretty clearly that the government shouldn't be funding angry art. Now, you remember when we hear about things like that, angry art or bossy women, is there like maybe a little undertone of what they mean by like urban art? Is there a little bit of an undertone there? It's like, actually, what do you mean you can't fund angry art? I mean, art is completely about emotion and expression. So what, you can fund loving art and I don't know, scared art, but not angry art. What are you talking about? It's just utter lunacy.
Well, just people are scared because when you occupy a position of privilege, making space for other people feels like injustice. When really all you're doing is providing for voices that have been shut out of discourse for far too long. And it's, and we see this, often joke about Jordan Williams and the Taxpayers Union being the best PR firm that artists can buy in this country, that they have a long history on the right of trying to whip up outrage about things that celebrate queer identity or art that celebrates, colonial discourse or post-colonial narratives and all of these things as being a waste of money. Oh, look, they're spending money on drag queens. Ha, ha, ha. This from the man who seems weirdly concerned about being patted down by aviation security. These are the sorts of, the state is throwing away money on these things, and this is an invalid use of public resources because this isn't something that matters to me, because I am the dominant culture, and I don't need people. I don't need to create avenues to be able to see myself represented or see things that reflect my worldview or my life experience or my family history, because that's sort of everywhere all the time.
I'm a defender of my free speech and free speech of those like me. John T says, sounds like David Seymour slept in and she found his cue cards on the kitchen table. Emma says, what is she talking about? Vicky says, word salad. Finn says, how dare Native peoples still be angry about colonization? Free Soul says, they've wound themselves up into a frenzy over a poem I doubt many have listened to.
But they will now.
The
first film I ever saw at the International Film Festival was because they were trying to ban it. One of the morality police were on a crusade. So let's ban this film. It's like I better watch this.
It was like the South Park episode about the bleeding Virgin Mary. It was rated 10 times more highly than anyone before it. Finn says, do they think the poem is a manifesto? They kind of do. They kind of think, but we've heard Karen Plunkett talking about this as well, talking about violence towards white people. It's like, no, they don't get it, or they choose. I think more likely is they choose not to get it. Why don't more TV hosts, says Gareth, stop and say, sorry, but what the fuck are you talking about? Peter King says snowflakes. It's actually what you said there, the snowflakes thing. The people who claim to be the biggest, toughest, sort of strongest advocates for they also seem to be the ones that are pretty fragile and melt pretty quickly. The ones that typically use the term snowflake are the ones that seem to melt very, very quickly with anything that they don't adhere to.